They said I owed them HOA fees. They locked my gates, sabotaged my dam, and called me a danger to the community. But when the rains came, it wasn't me they should have feared, it was the floodplain they paved over. This is the true story of how an off-grid veteran warned them. How they ignored the maps, destroyed the only thing protecting them, and built luxury homes right where the water had always flowed. I didn't fight back with fists or lawsuits, I let physics do the talking. What happened wasn't revenge, not really. It was a reckoning delivered by water exposed in court, remembered by every neighbor left standing in the mud. They destroyed my dam over unpaid fees. Then the flood took their whole neighborhood overnight. And it all really happened. They called my dam a liability. I called it the line between safety and disaster. Now it was gone. I stood at the edge of the break where concrete fractured like bone steel, twisted and blackened signs of something more than erosion, something deliberate. Below me, water surged, no longer held back, carving its old path straight for the new HOA development, less than a mile away. From my vantage point, I saw the rows of pastel houses, the ornamental gate now half submerged, and a crowd of board members standing helpless as the water turned their decorative rock beds into rivers. They didn't just take concrete and steel when they destroyed my dam. They took my shield, my father's safety. Now they watched the consequences pour toward them. But this mess didn't start with water. It started with a clipboard and a woman named Cynthia Bell. 3 months earlier, it was quiet the way I liked it. Out in Caldwell County, North Carolina, past the last power line, just scattered properties stitched together by old mineral deeds and water rights. I'd been here 6 years, came back after 15 years working state emergency planning, flood response, FEMA compliance. When my father's health failed, I left the office, came home, built the dam myself, reinforced the valley's contours, managed runoff from the old ridge catchment to a spillway that fed into the marsh below. We never flooded, not even during the worst storms. My father could rest easy, and so could I. Then came the encroachment. They called it Oak Shore Preserve, gated homes, smart sprinklers, zero lot lines. Started as 20 homes down the ridge, then became 50, then 75, then a board, then an HOA. At first I didn't care. Let them have their bylaws as long as they stayed out of my valley. But they didn't. One morning I came home to a notice stapled to my tool shed, unpaid community maintenance fees, $3,460. Due. Below that, in neat cursive, your structure does not conform to community design standards. Failure to comply may result in legal escalation and lien. Cynthia Bell, Chairwoman, Oak Shore HOA. I laughed. My land wasn't part of their HOA, never was. The deed was from 1972, long before Oak Shore existed. Mineral rights, water rights, a legal survey that drew a hard boundary half a mile north of their closest home. I called the number. No answer. Emailed, bounced back. When I drove to their office, I was told Cynthia wasn't available and to put concerns in writing. They didn't want a conversation. They wanted compliance. 2 weeks later, a drone buzzed above my dam while I cleared sediment from the lower gate. Then came photos in a new notice, environmental non-compliance, citing unpermitted construction and a fine of $200. I dug out my engineering notes, topo maps, and county correspondence from when I first installed the spillway. Everything was to code, rural exemption included. But the HOA didn't care. They weren't working with code. They were working with perception, with future development. Phase 4, lakeside villas backing directly into the natural runoff zone I'd managed for years. My dam was in the way. The first time I met Cynthia Bell in person, she was walking my fence line with 2 men in pastel polo shirts. She didn't wave, just looked at my camera, then kept walking. I approached. "You're on private land," I said. "We're just inspecting encroachments," she replied. "No, you're causing one." She smirked. "You're not a licensed contractor, are you?" "That'll matter when this goes to the county." They left, but that night I rechecked every anchor bolt, every permit, every inch of driveway camera footage. They weren't just trying to bleed me with fake fines. They wanted the land reshaped. Which brings us back to now. The flood had just begun. Below me, chaos SUVs stuck on rising curbs. Alarms wailing, HOA officers shouting into cell phones. But I just watched. I'd spent my life studying flow patterns, hydrology, risk maps. And I knew something they never learned in their board meetings: water doesn't respect fences and physics doesn't obey policy. I didn't move here to fight. I moved here to disappear. 6 years ago, I packed up everything, old Ford pickup, field manuals, my father, and drove west until the noise fell away. We ended up tucked beneath a ridge locals called Crow's Spine. After 2 decades in emergency management, 10 of them working on state-level flood mitigation, I'd had enough. Enough red tape, enough shouting matches in committee rooms while levees cracked. Developers pressured us to delay maintenance, counties approved subdivisions on ancient flood zones, and when things broke, they blamed the engineers. I found this valley on an old Army Corps survey from 1968, a natural basin shielded on 3 sides with one runoff corridor. It was perfect. Control. When your father sleeps with an oxygen machine, you think about what happens if the power goes out in a storm. I built the dam, not some grand monstrosity, just a reinforced earth wall, steel cages capped with a manual floodgate. It slowed runoff, redirected overflow into a pond behind our cabin. First spring melt, it worked. The county knew about it, filed a notification, didn't need a permit under rural exemption, but I documented everything anyway. But things change. First time I saw Oakshore trucks, 2 years after we moved in, big pickups, flashy logos, trailers of sod. They cut a new gravel path. The first development seemed harmless, houses on the south ridge well above the flood corridor. By year 3, Oakshore ballooned. Marketing signs everywhere, a new standard of mountain living. They didn't mention Phase 3's cul-de-sac sat right in the old marsh basin. I noticed things missing: a surveyor's stake, then a logging trail bulldozed flat with tire marks too wide for a pickup. I put up trail cams. That's when I caught them: 3 men in neon vests walking the edge of the dam, measuring tape clipboard, no permission. I checked county plat filings, Oakshore Preserve Phase 4, filed by a Shell LLC with plans right into the flood corridor. Illegal. You can't develop on a known floodplain without state review, unless you forge the maps, which they had. I had copies of the originals. Still, I waited. Gave them a chance to come to me. They didn't. Instead, the fines began. The drone footage, the woman with the perfect nails showing up like she owned my driveway. Cynthia Bell, chairwoman, said my dam was obstructing visual harmony and maybe violating watercourse code. I told her, that structure is keeping this valley dry, including your homes. She just smiled. Then maybe you should pay your share. My share of what? Community resilience. That's when I knew this wasn't about safety or rules. It was about expansion, and I was in their way. That night I pulled out every document I had. Old flood maps, my father's deed photos, emails to the county confirming I was exempt from HOA. I labeled them, dated them, backed them up because I had a feeling things were about to get dangerous. And I was right. It started with a fine, then a second, then a manila envelope final notice. Inside notice of delinquency, Oakshore Preserve. HOA $47,780 due. Failure to comply will result in lien enforcement. The rest was worse, a spreadsheet of expenses they claimed I owed: lawn irrigation, neighborhood beautification, gate maintenance, even pond reflection infrastructure. I wasn't in their damn HOA. My property predated them by decades, and yet they treated me like a rogue tenant. I called the county recorder's office. They confirmed Oakshore's jurisdiction ended at Creekstone Road. I lived off Hollow Bend Trail, 2 ridges over. How were they sending me? These, the clerk said. Some HOAs try to annex by perception. They start sending notices and hope folks comply. Only if you fight it, she said. I knew what they were doing, seen these tactics in emergency planning. It always started with paper, then moved to pressure. Within a week, they locked the access gate I'd used for years. No warning, just a keypad and a sign: Oakshore residents only. I bypassed it the first time using the maintenance trail, but the message was clear: this was about control. Then the harassment began. HOA patrols started driving up the public right-of-way, with GoPros idling near my property, zooming in on the dam. One dropped a measuring stick near the floodgate, pretending to check something. A contractor knocked on my door, here to perform a safety evaluation. I shut the door, filed a report with the sheriff. They told me civil matter. Take it up with the HOA. But the HOA wouldn't answer. The worst part was what it did to my father. He was fragile already, lungs weakened, dependent on oxygen. The tension made him nervous. The locked gate meant EMS would have to go around if anything happened. Every time a strange car idled by, he looked unsettled. Feels like a siege, he said one night over dinner. I agreed. So I documented everything: trail cam footage, violation notices, drone shots, deed copies, county records, spreadsheets, FOIA requests. One came back redacted, but not enough. Oak Shore's maps had been adjusted, elevation numbers hand-corrected, the floodplain boundary redrawn to exclude the new houses. It was fraud. Then came the meeting request, a summons, not a real one, but they demanded I appear at a compliance hearing. I knew if I didn't show, they'd spin it. So I went. Their community hall looked like a suburban resort. Cynthia Bell sat center smug in a red blazer. "We've reviewed your violations," she began. I slid forward my map. "You're outside our jurisdiction. Here's your boundary. Here's my deed. Here's your forged map." She blinked, then smiled. "These matters can be negotiated." "No," I said, "they can be litigated." I left. That night I double-locked the door, watched the still water in the moonlight, and felt it in my gut. They weren't going to wait for court. They were going to destroy the dam. It was 5:23 a.m. when I heard it, a low thud, not thunder, not an animal, but hollow and intentional. My father coughed in the next room. I pulled on boots, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped outside. The air was thick, damp. The ground was too soft. Then I saw it. The gate was hanging open, the steel chain cut clean through the lock in pieces. The floodgate had been lowered, deliberate effort. The trail cams were gone, only tire tracks leading to the utility road. They knew exactly what to do. This wasn't vandalism, it was sabotage. The dam was compromised. I took photos, measured the chain, collected lock pieces, printed a copy of their last fine notice, and wrote, "If this floods, it's on them." Filed a report with the county sheriff. The deputy, a young kid, said, "It's a civil matter." "Then you better hope this doesn't turn criminal," I said. I pulled out emergency schematics, traced the old creek bed. It ended in their new development, Phase 4, luxury homes on soil that had been marsh. That night it rained steady and unrelenting. The dam gate damage meant pressure built fast. The sensor blinked orange water was already 2 feet above baseline. My father watched from the porch. "They did it, didn't they?" "Yeah," I said. "Are we in danger?" "Not yet." He looked toward the ridge. "They don't know what's coming." The next morning I tried to confront them, brought the cut chain and photos. The receptionist said Cynthia was unavailable. "Tell her this," I said, setting the broken lock on the counter. "You broke something you didn't understand." That evening I installed a new cam, wired a tripwire sensor, but the rain hadn't stopped and the water kept rising. Then another letter. Final notice. Failure to comply will result in physical enforcement under HOA discretion. Cynthia Bell's signature. A threat, plain and simple. But they'd made a fatal mistake. They thought I was just a recluse with a grudge. They didn't know I used to write disaster response policy. They didn't know what was coming. The morning the dam broke, I was already on the ridge watching the feed from my bluff cam. By 4:47 a.m., the lower gate sensor pinged red, then the tripwire breached. I rushed down flashlight and sidearm. The lower valve was wide open, tools scattered, spray paint across the wall. Unauthorized structure removed per HOA mandate. The floodwaters surged, no longer held. I sprinted back, the roar of water echoing up the ridge. My father sat by the window. "It's happening, isn't it?" "Yeah." We had maybe 2 hours. The runoff would follow the original path straight into Oak Shore. I called 911, named. The HOA gave coordinates. Called my lawyer, called a reporter. By 6:05 a.m., the flood was a wide sheet of water pouring through the lowland. It followed the ancient path, the one the bulldozers tried to erase. First backyard flooded, then streets, then chaos. I documented everything: photos, drone footage, timestamps. I caught the face of a board member waist deep trying to open a community gate, keypad shorted and sparking. Caught Cynthia Bell, red blazer, soaked phone to her ear, screaming into nothing. We locked eyes. She saw me on the ridge. This wasn't revenge. This was physics. By 6:45 a.m., county trucks arrived, then sheriff, then EMS. 30 homes flooded, 8 uninhabitable, 3 cars swept into a retention pond. I gave my statement, showed the evidence. This isn't my flood. This is theirs. By midday, news choppers circled. Neighbors shouted, called for resignations. But not me. I stood on the ridge, watching water settle, truth rippling through streets that thought they were above consequence. Late that day, as rain tapped the windows, county emergency called. We've received distress calls from Oakshore flooding, power outages, road blockages. Can you confirm your location? We're elevated. The water's not coming for us, but it's going straight for them. That evening, the sound of water was no longer a trickle. It was a continuous roar. I checked sensors levels beyond critical. I grabbed an Axe flashlight and the last can of fuel for the chainsaw. If I could dig a shallow cut, maybe redirect the surge, but I wouldn't get the chance. 2 SUVs with HOA decals appeared. Cynthia Bell stepped out, drenched and furious. "You bastard," she hissed. "You planned this." "No," I said, "you did. You broke the dam." She pointed toward the valley. "You think this makes you right? You destroyed a neighborhood." I walked closer. "I told you where the floodplain was. Showed you the documents. You called it obsolete." Her voice cracked. "I have children in those homes. And I had a father with one way out until you locked that gate." She blinked, realizing. I pulled out a waterproof case with the evidence. "You're not just on the report, Cynthia. You're the reason they exist." By 6:00 a.m., the water reached its peak. I watched from the window as Oakshore Phase 4 drowned. The HOA park floated away. The power failed, transformers hissed. My father gripped my hand as the backup oxygen kicked in. We were stuck access road, underwater gate, locked helicopters, unsafe until the storm passed. I rationed what we had. By midday, the cabin was cold, oxygen running low. Then a knock at the door, 2 soaked Oakshore residents, breathless, carrying a cooler and first aid kit. "Do you need help?" Behind them, a line of people trudged uphill. No badges, just stunned eyes. They came to the man they'd find the dam, they'd destroyed the cabin they tried to erase. I cleared the front room, rolled out blankets, shared the stove. By nightfall, 17 people huddled inside. No questions. Not that night. We waited together. The irony wasn't lost on me. They called me paranoid, anti-progress, dangerous. But they came here in the end, to the shelter they threatened, the man they tried to erase. They said I was the problem, but the problem was always on paper. After the flood, the press came in waves. One outlet called it the suburb that forgot to check the map. But I didn't forget. Monday after the storm, I walked into Oakshore Phase 4, mud so deep it swallowed a fire hydrant. I wore waders, not because I had to, but because I wanted them to see the man they tried to fine into silence now walking through their failed empire. Cynthia was gone, rumors flying. Her office locked, phone off. I wasn't waiting on her. In the abandoned welcome center, I pulled the blueprints for Phase 4. There it was. Elevation inflated by 7 feet, flood risk minimal. I overlaid it with the original survey, floodplain scrubbed. I marked the fake, sent it to the Inspector General, State Board, and journalist. This wasn't a natural disaster. It was fraud. State engineers arrived. I showed them the damage, the evidence. The officer said, "What happened here wasn't an accident." By Friday, subpoenas hit Oakshore's board. The county initiated an audit. Reporters asked if I felt vindicated. No, I said vindication means someone listened. This is just the water doing what it was always going to do. That night I stood on the porch, my father beside me. "They'll come again," he said. "Maybe. Will you let them? I'll let the right ones." He nodded. There was one last thing.